Okay, if you're watching this video, you are looking to increase your overall rating or maybe a rating for a specific claim. And that's what I want to do today is I want to give you some ideas about, ways to maybe not just increase one claim that you have or one condition that you're already service connected for, but things that you should be thinking about if you just want to fix all of your VA disability stuff, you want to get on the right track and you're looking for like what's next, like where should I go? So I'll give you 4 tips on how to do that. The biggest problem in claims when, in general, or at least it's been my experience for myself, is that we underrate ourselves. We don't like think that it's going to be that big of a deal as far as like in terms of like what we're supposed to provide to get there. I'll tell you one thing that I've learned from myself over the years is that I'm like, okay, I got to get this thing service connected. Here's the 3, the 3 critical pieces that I need to provide. And I end up getting it connected. But then I underestimate how to, articulate what I'm dealing with or like how bad the condition is to get the right rating. So I've found myself in that predicament a few times. And just looking back, if I would have just thought about, putting the right evidence in there, I wouldn't have to appeal so many times. And so that's what I want to, that's kind of my feeling on that as in terms of like, when we submit a claim. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in one of these tips here. But you just want to make sure that like, you are trying to prove service connection, but at the same time, you're trying to prove, where you should be in the rating criteria, or at least give all the information to the rater so they can make the most logical decision. Another thing too is just simply not understanding how ratings are decided or like what information is needed. And I'll talk specifically about that in one of these tips. And again too, like I have a website, it's called informveteran.com. It's free for you to check out. There's no like paywall or anything. And I tried to create it to where it's, directed at people who, they're first time claiming, they click on this link. If you're looking to like, information or education on how to increase your rating, you check, you click on this link and then there's a section there for appeals. If you're interested, go down to the description down below. There's a link there for, how to increase or the education you need to increase your claim. Basically everything that I'm talking about here and more is there. So be sure to check that out. Okay. Number 1, you want to document some severity, not just service connection. So if you're watching this, you've probably already got quite a few claims already service connected. Maybe you're not where you're supposed to be in rating wise, or at least where you think you should be. So really, for this tip, you've got to make sure that you're documenting the severity of it. You've got to know, you've got to be able to document like all the symptoms and anything that they're going to need. I'll talk more about this later, but 38 CFR, talks every condition is outlined in 38 CFR in terms of what the rating percentage is. So if you're currently at 10 for something and you think you should be at 30, but you don't know what 30%, what the criteria is, then you're not going to get it. So when you're thinking about evidence and documentation, you want to show how bad it is, like current day. You want to focus on things like the frequency, the severity, the impact on daily life, and a lot of the different conditions are dependent on that condition, so know what's in 38 CFR. Tip number 2, I talk a lot about personal statements. They're a great way to articulate the severity. You want to be able to explain in your personal statement the impact, the symptoms, everything. You want to make sure that they get a good picture of like how this thing impacts you and what the symptoms are. Showing progression over time, that just kind of helps build on it. Be specific about like limitations and work impact. If you have to miss work, explain that. Corroborate your statement. Show that, show a note from work or show your sick leave form, whatever you have to use. Lastly, do you know what 38 CFR says about your condition? If you don't, then how do you know that you should be getting an increase? Like I said before, 38 CFR houses all the conditions. So if you go to your condition in 38 CFR, and you can simply do it by Googling 38 CFR plus your condition, it'll say 10%, here's the criteria. 30%, here's the criteria. 50%, here's the criteria. You should be able to look at that and say, you know what, I think I rate for like, a 50%. And then you need to look at your evidence and say, like, does my evidence really say that? Like, if I really rate for 50%, then my evidence should show that. And it's okay if it doesn't. But like, if you really rate a 50%, then you've got to be able to articulate those things, in your personal statement. It's got to be like, you got to be able to accompany that with the right medical evidence. All right. So number 3, secondary conditions. This is really the way to get your overall rating increased. If you have a condition currently that was caused by another condition that was service connected, the VA honors that. Okay, they will allow you to submit a claim requesting a secondary condition. And the good thing about that is that secondary condition doesn't just get like an extra 10% if it gets approved. I mean, it could really get whatever that condition is. It could be a 10, 30, a 50, 70. It could even be 100% for you. So it's very important to know like what you're currently dealing with and whether or not it could have been, connected to something that you're already connected for. Now, I know that's a really hard thing to figure out. So it's going to be like one of those things where you need to do some research on things that you're currently already dealing with. And you need to know, like, whether you need to, Google's your friend in that circumstance. Look at potential conditions that, it could be caused by. I think you can tackle this in the brainstorm phase by, maybe taking what you're currently connected for and, asking Google, like, hey, like, what are the most, common secondary conditions to this condition, or backtracking it and saying, hey, I'm currently dealing with a really bad back. Like, what could have caused this? Do you have orthopedic conditions that could have caused that, could have caused that, problem. And then, you can kind of start figuring it out from there. Do you potentially have a secondary condition? If you type secondary in the comment section below, I'll send you a list. It's like 4 or 5 pages of, common secondary conditions. Just remember, just because it's on, my list doesn't mean that it will work for you. Every veteran's different. Every, body is different. So this is just to kind of get you brainstorming and thinking. And then once you kind of feel like you have something that could potentially be there, you can go to your doctor and talk to your doctor about it. That's one of the reasons why secondary conditions are so complex, because, nobody's going to call you up as a veteran and say, hey, I noticed that you had, this condition and that condition. Like, we think it might be secondary caused. It doesn't work that way. You have to initiate this stuff on your own. So just be mindful of that. And secondaries can be a great way to not only increase your overall rating for compensation purposes, but also so that, those additional conditions that you are currently dealing with, you can now get help from the VA in terms of like medical care for you, which would be good for you and your family so that you get the right treatment. Okay, number 4, don't rely on C&P exams entirely. Like when you go in there to a C&P exam, if it's been anything like mine, I mean, you could be in there for 15 minutes. If you don't give them all the information up front with like evidence and be like somewhat of an expert on your own condition and maybe how it is rated, it could be tough to like get the right rating, right? If you're an advocate for yourself and you're going into those C&P exams and you've submitted, all of the right evidence that shows everything, and you can speak to it, and like you're going to be asked questions on a DBQ, have a good C&P exam, have all that information readily available, even bring it with you, so that that's helpful. Some things that will help you in a C&P exam is to have that private medical evidence. A real quick story: I went to a C&P exam. I think they had my doctor's records at the time, and the doctor was like, "Oh, look, it looks like you went to a specialist. Like, look at all the things he said. Do you mind if I just copy this word for word?" Yeah, I don't mind at all. I don't always recommend a nexus letter right out of the gate, but if you've been denied and you're having a hard time getting it, a nexus letter could be a great way. They do, if you get one for free, great, from your own doctor. But there are some folks out there that will charge you for them. And if they do a good job, maybe it's worth the $1,000 you pay, but, bring that nexus letter. You can also get an independent evaluation, and also other things are non-medical evidence that could be helpful as well, just to kind of show and, some of the symptoms you're dealing with. Like one good example with that would be a journal of your symptomology. And the journaling is actually good for this, especially for veterans, because we have a hard time, giving everything, right? Like we downplay a lot of stuff, and the journal might be like, oh, you know what? Like that day did suck. And here I wrote it down and this is what it said. Now I remember. That's helped me a lot. All right. If you like this video, if this content's good for you, if you are generally just looking for information out there to understand this process, I'm not an expert by any means. I'm not a VSO. I'm not an agent, accredited agent. But I understand like what I've learned from the process, and that's really what I'm trying to, get out there to the crowd. Check out the website that I built, informedveteran.com. It's just got a lot of information that I've learned over the years. So I hope it helps you out. Don't forget to subscribe for more information.